unbelievable. My first time having caviar was in Russia in 1990, and I was looking for caviar for the trip between Moscow and St. Petersburg on the train. And I bought a half a kilo, which is roughly a pound. It was $3. Here in New York, it was $2,000 for the exact same caviar. Okay, the eggs to go with the caviar were $3 a piece also, which was really crazy. That caviar experience, I'll never ever recreate. The problem with caviar, and people will tell you that they've had the best caviar Iranian, the best caviar Russian, the best caviar from California, the best caviar from Argentina. I don't care where you say you've had it from. If that's your memory, I'll never compete with that. Caviar is a passion. And if you have that passion for caviar, it's going to work out well. I'm going to turn on a quick video of our farm. I think it's so important to actually see the fish, because talking about the fish is totally different than actually seeing it. If you look at that background shot, there was actually, from above, there were all the different ponds. And that's actually a river that actually runs through there. These sturgeon will grow to be 2,000 pounds. They'll live over 100 years. 20 foot long. Our caviar, we harvest anywhere from 4 years to 20 years, depending on where the caviar production actually is from, what type of species. They're bottom feeders. They actually eat all the algae. Everybody thinks, what kind of fish do they actually eat? Do they eat fish meal? What is it? And no, it's actually all vegetarian. The beluga caviar, the Spencer beluga, is actually one of the few meat eaters in the sturgeon population. And we actually raise beluga, but we can't import it into the U.S. because of bans and CITES bans on the caviar. So we'll go into that a little bit further. The cool part about our farm, the fish are very well taken care of. They're actually checking for a microchip that's put into every single fish so that they can tell when the caviar is ready. It also keeps a history of everything that's happened to that sturgeon, from its weather, what it's been fed, what ponds it was in, anything that might have happened to that fish in its history. So we can trace every tin of caviar back. So on the bottom of our tins, you're going to see a lot number. That lot number is actually the microchip that's actually put into this fish. Now, everybody asks, well, how much caviar do you get out of the fish? And it's anywhere from 15 pounds up to 40 pounds, okay, in a harvest on our normal. Now, everybody goes, well, what do you do with the rest of the fish? Well, believe it or not, caviar was the byproduct. The fish is what we raised it for. Originally, the sturgeon meat over in Italy was so popular that in 1978 we started raising the sturgeon. We were slaughtering them at 3-4 years at 160, 140 pounds just for the meat. Well, when the bans came and all of a sudden you couldn't use any wild caviar, guess what? It became profitable to raise it for another 3, 4, 10 years. And that's where you get the caviar. So caviar was actually the byproduct for our farm. So we've been around since 1978. We're the second oldest farm. We've actually helped a lot of other farms get started. So they're raising sturgeon almost anywhere in the world right now, and we'll go over a lot of that. If you look at the hygienic conditions, I've actually been over there. I've actually gone through the whole process from harvest to packaging, and it's really pretty cool. They use an atmosphere packaging for local. We don't ship that over here because a lot of times the atmosphere packaging gets broken coming over here. So we actually use the larger tin here, which we call an original tin. It's a 2 kilo, so it's close to 4.5 pounds. So it adds up quite a few dollars there. They have to be very delicate when they actually pack the tins. When you put the eggs in there, if you break them, you'll see a lot of oil. Okay, so that's one of the things they do. They're all ice packed. You want to keep your caviar as cold as possible. As long as you keep our caviar in the below 38 degrees, you'll have no problems. I've had no issues whatsoever. The optimum temperatures is between 28 and 35. So if you're really a purist, you're going to have a refrigerator or someplace to pack it. Sometimes people will actually ice pack it and then just pull out what they need as they go. These are just different brands. The white sturgeon is we call tradition, and the tradition is called that because that's the sturgeon we actually started with. And actually we started out of the Columbia River in California, and we brought 6 fish over to Italy, and that's where they got started. So, if you notice on the bottom of these tins, they all say Molossus. Molossus is key because that's a 3% salt factor. There's no 5%, 7%, 9%. So there's going to be a difference in quality and taste and flavor. The Caviar De Venise is what we would call a Bayeri sturgeon. Almost everywhere in the U.S. right now that's being sold as an Osetra. It's really not an Osetra. Osetra takes 11 years to raise. The Bayeri takes 4. So you can think, what should the cost be? Well, you're buying the Osetra name if you're buying a Bayeri Osetra. If it says, Osetra, it's got to be a golden Scotty sturgeon. You'll see that on the bottom of my tins. And I'll be showing you that later. The service can go from elaborate to very simple. It really depends on what type of restaurant or what type of service you're actually doing. This is a purist service, and you can see that they're literally just putting their spoon in and scooping it out. It's almost always a mother of pearl spoon. One of the things that you'll like about our farm is it's all running river. They use a aeration system to put oxygen in the water, but there's no filtration system. A lot of times caviars will have a little bit of a grit or a dirt flavor to it, and that some people like that. Ours is going to have that. It's going to be a very clean flavor, and I hope you all taste it, and then you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So that's the video. Where did that go? Thank you. The history of caviar, how to understand it, how to enjoy it. I started on my first sentence. Do you remember the first time you had caviar? Or do you remember the best time you had caviar? That you'll never compete with. Okay? Having great caviar again, though, that's always a pleasure. And it's always something special. It's like Christmas and Thanksgiving for me. I don't care what I spend for my Thanksgiving dinner. I don't care what I spend on my Christmas dinner. The rest of the time of the year, I'm a little cheap. I try to save some money. But when it comes to caviar, I serve it at certain times. Sometimes if I'm having a barbecue, people will say, you serve caviar at a barbecue? I said, yeah, I serve 1 or 2 grams per person. I'll do a little bit of mashed potatoes on a spoon and then 1 gram of caviar on that spoon. You know what? The people that come to my barbecues will say, that was unbelievable. I couldn't believe how good it was. And I do it ahead, so I don't even have to worry about it. So, make it easy. All right. Yes? We always have an open invitation. So, the pleasure of caviar. Is caviar just for food? I don't think so. I think it's a certain philosophy, a certain mentality that people come to grow into. People have had caviar their whole lives. Have either been the cruise lines, so they're over 50 or 60 years old. They've been traveling. They've seen our caviar. They get it free on first-class airlines. So they're not the ones we're looking at as our biggest customer. The biggest customer probably is the new people that have never had it, or they've only had bad caviar. So if you're out there currently selling, the best thing you can do is educate your customer. Okay. Once again, people think it's all about Gucci or getting the most expensive, but caviar is affordable now. Caviar is not as expensive as it was. 20 years ago, caviar was the same price as it is today. And that's really crazy. Now the problem with caviar also is a lot of times it goes through 2 and 3 hands. So when you buy from Fortune Fish, the nice part is you're buying directly from the farmer, because we only sell to them. It's not going through 3 different processes, 3 different hands. It's all directly from the farmer. Okay. Caviar, also a cooking method. And the biggest thing is people don't know what to do with caviar. Your consumer is probably going, what do I do with the caviar? I'm afraid. I'm going to spend $150 on a tin of caviar, and then I'm going to take it home and nobody's going to like it. Well, you can make it very simple for them, or you can make it as complex as they are ready for. The first presentation, that's going to take a little bit of work. And if you've got to serve 20 people, that's a lot of work, okay? The second presentation is actually very simple. All it is a slice of tuna, a slice of camembert, and 2 grams of caviar. Very, very simple. And you know what? People are going to talk about that appetizer. That's outrageous. Blinis or pancakes are the most traditional Russian service. Toast points are always good. That's a crepe on the bottom. And then there's also the traditional Russian caviar service with the chopped egg and the chopped onion. A couple of my favorites. I've been experimenting with pizzas and putting caviar on. So you cook the pizza in advance, and then you put the caviar on, and you can do it. I'm also doing like a focaccia, and I'm experimenting with that right now. I love experimenting. So, if you can tell, I love to eat. So the potatoes with the creme fraiche is always good. And one of the ones that a lot of the top restaurants are doing is a little angel hair, a little bit of butter, some scallion, mix that together, put the caviar on top, serve it just like that. Sometimes they do it on a spoon, sometimes they do it on the fork. I've seen it all different ways, but this is really, really good. If you go to our website, you'll see the recipe for it right there. It's so simple. Okay, what is caviar? In the US, there is no definition for caviar. If you went to Europe, caviar has to be from an Aspencer sturgeon. Okay, it cannot be a red caviar. It can't be a black caviar, which would be like a paddlefish. Okay, because paddlefish is not a sturgeon, but they sell it as caviar here in the U.S. The Bayeri being sold as a Guldenstadt as Ocetra is along the same process, so that's really key. Artificial colored substitutes, people use a lot of Tobacco. Okay, it's usually anywhere from 10 to 12% salt, and it's usually previously frozen. Okay, I don't think anybody's got it fresh because I was actually looking for it. If you look at here, I've got a bunch of the different rows, and a lot of these are labeled caviar, but they're really not. The lumpfish, the salmon roe, trout roe herring, capelin, bowfin, paddlefish. Then you get the vegan caviars, the surimi caviars. There's 100 different variations. Go ahead. Agar is actually a vegetarian. It's like a seaweed protein, yeah. So, but they're selling that as caviar now. Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, it's out there.
I use that to think of things.
Yep. So all these things all go into the caviar myth because they're not caviar. Okay, so.
Is there no regulation?
Nothing. Nothing out. The United States is one of the few. Canada's got more regulations than we do. Okay? If you go to Europe, they can't make those claims. They'll go to jail. All right? It's cut dry in the rest of the world. In the U.S., there are no laws to it.
Is that a lobbying thing? Because obviously they do with champagne, brandy, everything else.
I think the lobby is in the opposite direction, unfortunately. I think the other companies, the ones that are making the vegan caviar, they don't want to give that up. They don't want to give that name up. And if you look at what's being raised in the U.S., most of it is similar to sturgeon, but they're really not. Okay, so Dakota Alimentarius is the World Health Organization, and the Food and Agricultural FAO And what they basically said, and this is their definition in the world, so in order for you to sell caviar, it has to be in the Ann Spencer species. If it's not caviar. So our philosophy in Italy is the same. So when we sell you caviar, you're getting 100% caviar. This is kind of a cool slide, and anybody that wants this presentation can get this because it's actually really cool. It takes 40 days to weed the fry, so the real small fish, and they get the warmest water coming out of the aquifer in the beginning, and then it cools down as it goes through the different ponds. So for 40 days, we keep them there, and we just get them to grow, okay? They controlled fry up until a year. Once it hits that 1 year mark, we put the microchip in it, because before that it's too small, okay? And the microchip doesn't hurt the fish. It lives in there for 20 years, and it just keeps on keeping track of exactly what that fish is all about. So, 6 years we separate out the females from the males, and this goes back to why do we raise the sturgeon in the first place? Because the sturgeon meat is so valuable. So the males instantly go to the restaurants in Europe, okay? I think we sent about 25% of all of our sturgeon to Russia, okay? And they buy it. It's $40 a pound frozen, okay? So it's kind of crazy, but that's what we do. And to bring it here in the U.S., it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, although we're looking at it. So hopefully maybe down the line. Fattening of the females and making sure the eggs get to the right size is about 9 years on most of the fish. And then their second time of actually having a roe sack, we'll harvest, and that's usually about 11 to 13 years. Okay. The key on this is the time. We're feeding those fish for all that time. There's no money coming in. Okay, so this farm has been around for a long time. We're very solid. It's really nice to know that they're going to be around for a lot more years. Everything's sustainable. It's just going to keep on growing. I'll go into a little bit further. Life cycle of a sturgeon, where you can actually start harvesting them. The sterlet is 3 to 4 years. Siberian sturgeon, which is the Bayeri, that's the one I was talking about, we call it Venise. That's 5 to 7. The Savruga is 7 to 9. Everybody's asking for Savruga caviar. Can't bring it in the U.S. right now. All right, there's too many import problems not bringing it in. We actually raise Savruga. We raise all these. The Osetra we bring in, that's 8 to 11 years. The California white sturgeon, 10 to 14 years. That's our #1 seller. Okay, it just hands down, I sell 8 to 1. So if you're looking for an introductory caviar, that's the one. If you're looking for something for an application, that's the one. If you're looking, yes?
Where does Wisconsin, does that even fall into, is it a sturgeon in Wisconsin?
Oh yeah.
Does that even fall into the category or no?
As far as
you being able to harvest caviar?
Yeah. They harvest caviar all over the world. So right now, Wisconsin, I'm not sure if they're actually pulling the harvest, because I think what they're doing is they're harvesting the fish, because the fish is more valuable than the caviar. That it doesn't take them as long to raise.
And where would it fall?
It's usually an Atlantic, transmontanous, or it could be one of 5 or 6 different species.
But still grow as large as you talked about before?
Sometimes. It depends on the fish. Sometimes some fish grow leaps and bounds. The Bayeri sturgeon, 5 to 7 years. All right, and it'll grow an extra 60 pounds over the Osetra, which is 8 to 11 years. So, depending on what you're looking for and what you're harvesting for, that's going to be the key.
But if you were to harvest caviar from a Wisconsin sturgeon, it wouldn't necessarily be of lesser quality. I don't know.
Not necessarily. It really depends on what it's eating, what kind of water it's coming out of. I mean, if it's coming out of the St. Croix, most likely. Okay, that's what I'm thinking. And the St. Croix is a great river. It's actually going to be very clean, but you might get a little bit of muddiness in there. It just depends. Okay. And then the European sturgeon or the beluga. Huso is completely banned. Okay, you can't bring it into the U.S. We raise it over in Italy. I believe it's something like $600 an ounce being sold over there right now. Okay, and we can only harvest so much because it takes 20 years to raise that fish before you can actually harvest. So that's really a long time. Long time to invest without getting any money back. Caviar time in history. I'm missing some words here. But anyways, the Greeks actually did it 2,200 years ago. And this was one of the plaques that actually was the Greeks, the Romans. There we go. 200 million years ago, sturgeons appear on Earth. 2,200 years ago, the first was Egyptian, Greek, and Romans. And the Romans took it all over the place. And anywhere they could find a river that was actually able to harvest sturgeon, it became very popular. 1240, first evidence of consumption in Russia. All right, so 1240 is a long time ago. The Orthodox Church actually helped in Russia to bring it as a popular product to the common man. It was a common man food for the longest time. In 1675, the Tsars actually established the first caviar trade. In 1695, they wanted a monopoly. The state ran all the caviar. So the Russians got all the popularity for the caviar, but caviar was being harvested all over the world at that time. And people don't even realize it. Russian or Iranian, they come out of the same Caspian Sea. All right, so all that caviar is coming out. Some people say the Russian's better, some people say the Caspian's better. It's the rivers that the fish are coming up to spawn in that made the difference, and what they were eating in their final days. So you'll hear about, golden Iranian. You can't get it anymore. It's completely banned. Both of them are banned. 1927, signed agreement for Russia and Iran Society for Fishing and Production of Sturgeons. 1953, suspension of the agreement. And the Iranians actually came into their own. So they actually started doing their own caviar. End of the 1800s, declining resources from the Caspian Sea, the Black Sea, spread of fishing in several territories of the world. As fast as they opened up, they closed. One of the biggest producers and the largest consumption ever recorded was out of California and New Jersey. Okay, and you would say, why California and New Jersey? Because the sturgeon were so populous. Okay, between 1860 and 1910, we wiped out all the sturgeon. They actually built a rail line in New Jersey from Caviar, New Jersey to New York City, and from Caviar, New Jersey to Philadelphia. Okay, Caviar, New Jersey is now known as Oceanside. Okay, but Caviar, New Jersey, they would take hundreds of thousands of pounds, tons of caviar and sturgeon right into the cities. And those rail lines did not haul people. They were strictly there for the fish. All right? If you go into a bar, instead of getting a bowl of peanuts, you'd get a tin of caviar set in front of you. It's probably very salty and very difficult to eat, but you'd have to drink a lot of beer in order to make it worthwhile. So, but that's how we wiped out our caviar. Okay? The Belagopic, the consumption becomes very, very popular. It's just everybody, all the aristocrats in every country wanted caviar. It was on their table, it was on their plate. 1917, the October Revolution, that's where all the Russians ran to France because everybody was upset they couldn't get enough caviar because the stocks were being depleted. 1970s, first breeding farms, Italy, France, and the USA. France was first, Italy was second, and then the USA was third. 1998, they established CITES, which is actually a good thing. CITES has been very good about trying to establish the right quotas for certain areas and make sure the fishes don't become depleted. Unfortunately, CITES only has so much control. In the case of the Caspian Sea, they've wiped out almost all the sturgeon. There's almost nothing left. Okay, it's really a shame. 2006, the Caspian Sea, beluga is completely banned. All fish from the Caspian right now is completely banned. They're not allowed to take anything. The Iranians still take a small amount, but it's so minimal, and it's really a shame that they take it. 2007, we actually did 24 tons of caviar for the first time, and we do that every year. We keep on growing, which is really great. 2014, CITES has now added Kaluga sturgeon. Anybody heard of Kaluga? Kaluga is actually the little brother to beluga sturgeon, and it comes out of China, but it's actually on the border of Russia and China. So it's actually a Huso Dicarius as far as the species. Instead of Huso, it's a Huso Dicarius. The fish is really big eggs, great quality. The fish needs to be at least 16 years in order to give you good caviar. Right now, there are no fish in that river over 10 years old. So they're wiping that out, so that was banned in July. So anybody that's asking you for Kaluga, you're not going to get it. Nakari was also banned. And we're still looking for an agreement on that because we've been raising Nakari ever since for the longest time also. No rush, no stress. If you don't take good care of your fish, it doesn't make any difference. You're not going to get good caviar. Okay? So we take very good care of these fish. They are such happy fish. I mean, it's really pretty amazing when you actually see it. Temperature control, respect of the natural cycle, no forced growth. And what does that mean, no forced growth? There are farms out there that work on lighting systems that only light the days 20 days. So they try to trick the fish into only living 20-day cycles, and they move it to 16-day cycles towards the end, so that they can actually get the fish to grow faster. Okay, so we don't do that. We don't play games with the fish. And actually, if you look at our farm, and you have an open invitation to go, believe it or not, we have an open invitation for anybody to come see our farm because it's literally a farm. Okay, and you'll be outside, and whether it's snowing, raining, beautiful sunshine, that's what the fish has to deal with, just like in nature. Stress and well-being, I talked about that. Degree of maturation, it's choosing the exact point to harvest the fish so that the caviar doesn't go to waste. The fish itself is going to be big enough and perfect for size, because we'll sell all the meat. There's nothing goes to waste on that fish. Okay. Serdante, what is the best bite? Egg with salt. Okay, you need a little bit of sodium in it. It's 3% is molossil. Most caviar in the U.S. is 5%. So when you taste caviars and you ever want to do a true comparison, what you want to do is to taste the two side by side. Okay, if you call Fortune Fish, I'm sure they'll give you a 10-gram tin to taste your caviar up against somebody else's because I guarantee it's going to be night and day. I've had such great luck doing taste tests. That's always fun. It all starts with the harvest and making sure that the room is completely sterile. This is actually a surgical outlet. There's no outside oxygen coming in. There's nothing from the outside atmospheres. If you look there in full garb, the rooms are completely sterile. It's really an amazing process. The first time, I walked in there, you do the booties, you do the wash, you do the whole 9 yards. It's really pretty amazing. They actually sterilize the fish using a light solution before they do the harvest. And then when they actually get the caviar, they put it in that bowl. It actually goes through that wall and goes into another room so that they can actually process the caviar. So the harvest room is different than where they process the caviar. And then there's another room that actually packs the caviar. So they're completely separate. they're separating the caviar from the egg sac so that you don't get any of those little white bits in the caviar. So if you ever see caviar that's got the little white bits, that's what it would be. Making sure the salt is balanced. They actually use a computer to tell exactly how much the weight of the caviar is, and then they add the 3% salt. Possible repacking. People repack our caviar. They repack everybody else's caviar. They buy on the open market and they just market it. And people will tell me, I can get, Ocetra caviar for $35 an ounce. I said, well, what species is it? Does it have a species on the bottom of the tin? And they're like, well, no, it doesn't have that. I said, does it have a shelf life on it? And a lot of times it doesn't have that either. So if they're repacking, I would be very leery about that. This comes on all of our original tins, and it's actually a CITES number. And if you ever need it, we can actually give it to you. The pleasure caviar, the taste, there are differences among the fish in the same pond. It's really important for us to make sure that it's right. Dimension, every caviar is that we actually take a picture of when we first harvest, so we know exactly what size the eggs are that came out of that tin or out of that fish. Consistency depends on the species, the environment. Aroma, caviar should have no aroma. If it smells sweet, it's on its spoil. If it's salty or fishy, it's not good. So we actually use 3 different names: Tradition, Ocetra, and Caviar De Venise. And the reason we do that is so that we have a clear definition of what the species are. And it's Transmontanus, Guldenstadi, and the Bayeri. Those are the Tradition, sturgeon roe. I'm going to podcast. There's 3.5% salt. It's a purity tasting. It's much better just by itself. You don't need the hard-boiled eggs, the onions, because a lot of times that's either over-processed, it's a 5% or a 7% salt, so you need something to break the salt, okay? Although you can use our caviar with those typical presentations also. Enjoy the caviar at a cold temperature. Caviar is soft. When I first saw that, I was like, how can you say caviar is soft? Well, what they're trying to tell you is, if caviar is really poppy, and a lot of people have had it that way, that's processed. All right, it's been pasteurized. They usually use a sous vide method. They bring it up to like 80 degrees for up to 4 hours. Okay, so you're soft boiling the eggs before you put them in. It changes the whole taste profile, and it also adds 180 to 365 days shelf life on it. So you're getting caviar that is just not the same. It's not fresh caviar. Never on hot dishes. You can put it on something warm. A lot of times, today, if anybody tasted out there, I made you put it on your hand. And the reason I made you put it on your hand is it actually brings a little bit of warmth to it and actually makes it come back to life. Let's see, mousses, light emulsions, purees, milk croutons, great with blinis, good with toast points. When it's fresh, it has a delicate taste. It's very expensive, but we cannot be stingy. So, like I said, I don't have a problem spending the money. Light starches are always good. Potatoes, rice, wheat, cream, ricotta, moderate acidity. You don't want to put it in tomato sauce. White Calabasias, and this is very simple. We're the largest producer in the world. Okay, it's over 25 tons a year, year in, year out. We always do it. Completely sustainable, no hormones, no antibiotics, 100% molossil, I gotta say that one more time, 3% salt. It's an open system aquifer. It comes out of the Dolomites. It's a river that actually runs through Italy that we actually use, and that's where our water supply comes from, so it's extremely clean. We can trace every tin of caviar back to the fish it came from and its life's history. We're Friends of the Sea certified. Anybody heard of Friends of the Sea? They were one of the first to be out there to do sustainable and well-maintained stocks that we actually are humanely raising the animal. Marine Stewardship Council does it here in the U.S. But if you ask them, they'll say, oh, they're friends of the sea, that's good. So, species identified in every tin, consistent top quality. When I buy my samples, I don't ask for anything special. I just say, send me, 30 of these and 20 of those. And whatever they have, that's what they send me. So, they don't open up special tins. And everything that we actually ship is packed that day. So we don't have a huge stock already packed. It's all in original tins, and we actually pack it and FedEx it overnight. The biggest selling point for us, we're from the source. You're buying our caviar, you're not buying somebody else's. It's not 3 different caviars blended together. It's actually 100% Calabasias caviar. Last June, I took these pictures in the farm, and I just thought it was just so cool. And actually, I got to hold one of the fish. And people were like, "You wanted to hold the fish?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I would like to catch the big 250 pound. I'll put a bathing suit on. I don't care." And they didn't want me to do that, but they let me hold one of the little ones. And the thing I found out that was really cool is the sturgeon, just like any animal, as soon as you grab it, it's gonna try to get away. As soon as it comes out of the water, completely dies. Okay, and they're one of those fish that can live outside of water for like 2 hours. So it's really pretty cool. But this little guy was just great. I mean, he was probably this big, and it took me like 2 seconds to just reach in and grab him. Once I got him out of the water, he calmed right down. So, and then if you this pond here, we have a 1,700 pound white sturgeon in that pond. We've had in there for over 20 years. And the cool part is if you go to the farm, make sure they let you in downstairs, because there's a glass underneath the pond, so you can actually see into the pond and see all the fish swimming around. And they'll feed them for you. It's really pretty cool. And this is one of the tanks. These are the 3-footers. And they're in a tank waiting for a big pond. So as they get bigger grounds to grow. Okay. And that's it. That's it. Thank you very much. Now, who wants to taste some caviar?